the moment of truth. Something out of absolutely nothing. And the dynasty continues. The first Super Rugby Pacific title goes to the Crusaders. An emphatic 21-7 win over the Blues at Eden Park.
You have to hand it to them, Jeff. 6 titles in a row. They are like our Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan. And David Hovili said after the game to you, Mills, this is what dreams are made of. They are a great team.
World-class performance in their most difficult stage. They weren't at home. They rose to the challenge. They did everything they needed to do. Clearly well prepared, clearly well coached, Mills. They went out and delivered, and they're big players, and they had plenty of them. I don't think there wasn't a player who didn't deliver on the night, and that tells you how good this side and how good this environment is.
Oh, it was an onslaught right from the get-go, and it's interesting talking to Scott Barrett, and he was quite nervous, you know. Like you mentioned, the fact that they had to come to Auckland, they're away from home, this is new territory in terms of a final, but everyone was on the same page, and they had real self-belief, what they were going into, they were going to come away with the goods. I mean, there was a period there when the Blues really defended, and you thought, man, if they could hold on, it could possibly, the momentum could swap the other way. But JK, they were just on a different level.
I think the disappointing thing from a Blues perspective was actually Sam Lock. We spoke about it all week, didn't we? We spoke about Sam Whitelock having something up his sleeve, especially from the line-out point of view. And it started there, and the Blues didn't really deal with it. And then we saw some of the old habits coming in, like pushing that past Goldie, where they were trying to create something instead of being patient. I can't remember them having the ball with any sequence of play where they didn't make a mistake until the second half. And that's just pressure. That's just, you're waiting for a final, you get there, and then it's not what you expect, and you've got this juggernaut in front of you. So I thought there was some really interesting performances. I thought Whitelock was outstanding. I thought Scott Barrett, after his red card, was a little bit tentative, but last night he got back to just that really devastating, really tough play at the ruck. So for me, it was a real game that you talk about setting it up front,
We talked about it last night, and we'll talk about it for many weeks to come in regards to their performance being based on the back of one thing, and their line-out defence was the one factor that the Blues didn't counter. And it meant that they were in control of the ball, in control of territory and where they played the game. We'll look at the stats a little bit later on. But bottom line, the Blues were never in a field position and were never in control of possession to get their game going. And this is the thing that probably was disappointing, if I'm thinking from a Blues perspective, is the fact, what have the Crusaders done in all of their title reigns? They focus at the source. And the source of the game is the set piece. Yep. Whether it be the line-out or the scrum, pure and simple, Mills, that's the fundamentals of the game. That's where you have to start and prepare for. And when they put pressure on here at source, it just takes you right out of their game. This is where they were remarkable. And you talk about being on the same page. They were on the same page as the Blues line-out. And this is where this game, for me, was won and lost, because the Blues were never in at the moment they couldn't control possession.
How did they not see that coming, though?
Well, this is what I was going to say. When it rained, you thought, OK, we need to refocus on the set piece. Everything is really crucial, and we're playing a side that's probably #1 in the world at getting their set piece, sort of when it comes to finals football. They didn't adapt, and then the confidence went out. They went to the front. They were hesitant at the front. They needed something a little bit different, and so I guess in terms of finals hardened, they weren't quite there, and then the momentum was with the Crusaders the whole night.
Oh, look, you needed to go to 3-man, you need to go to 5-man, you need to mix it up quick. I think, actually, if you think about what's positive out of this, I think it's the beginning of the Blues. I remember in 1983, we went down to Canterbury country. We were probably the favourites, and they just pantsed us. It was unbelievable. And we came back in 85 and won it. But that was the right, we're actually not good enough. Yes. And you've got to keep working hard.
See, Kirsty, I look at this, though, and I look at this Crusaders group, and Bryn Hall is the only piece of the puzzle that's leaving right now.
Pablo Matera's...
Oh, Pablo Matera as well, but it's not like they haven't got an Ethan Blackadder coming back next season.
So how do you not see them winning another title already?
Well, it's not winning a title, but being the same side. being the team that goes into this situation, they'll be in part of the playoffs going forward and incredibly difficult to beat. And the fact that they have transitioned through some great players. But you think of the guys who didn't play this season. No Joe Moody. In fact, Sam Whitelock missed games. I just look at this and they are a remarkable franchise who continue to set the standard.
Yeah.
And once again, in 12 months' time, we could be sitting here once again talking about a fantastic, fantastic season.
Yeah, well, I think they've set the standard, and but other teams are rising. I think the Blues have had an amazing season. They're getting better. They will be hurting like crazy, and I think that when someone sets a standard, the Auckland team probably did in the 80s, then the Canterbury team took over, and the Crusaders have been setting the standard for how long, Mills? Probably 20 years now. So other teams are now going, right, the Blues nearly got their season right, and they didn't get the last week or the last 80 minutes. The Crusaders probably had their best game last night, and the Blues probably had their worst. You can't do that, Mills, in finals footy.
No, you can't. But I suppose, the terrifying thing is from other franchises is now the Crusaders have got a blueprint of how to win in this sort of way. During the season, wasn't as fluent as perhaps they would have wanted it to be. But look how they finish off. So here's another real massive sort of advantage to them going forward. I agree with you. I think the Blues. I think there will be confidence here. They've got a hell of a lot of young guys that are coming through. Just remember Cygnus, Sullivan, Lamb, Derry, McKenzie, Evans, Vikena and Funaki. That's a big chunk that, Leon McDonald has really, given them some experience. So in terms of what you're saying, I think they are. I think they'll be building nicely. He's rotated his squad throughout the season, so it's been quite good.
Did we miss Patrick Tuipulotu?
We'll talk about that in a minute, because I think, when you talk about the lock position, I want to talk a bit more in depth when we talk about the Blues. I do want to touch on the stats, though, of the game, because sometimes the stats don't tell the story. These stats, they tell the story of this.
Ooh!
Yeah, and pure and simple.
Take them down straight away. Look at that.
You won't have to suffer too much longer. You won't have to suffer too much longer. But bottom line, you don't control possession. You don't control territory. 8 minutes and 47 seconds in your own 22, Mills. If you're the Blues, that's the sort of dominance you talk about. In fact, they did well not to get beaten by more. Let's be honest. There were 4 or 5 tries. Leicester Whanganuku probably scored in the first half. It's just you didn't see the grounding on the grass. But the big key stat there, and there it is, 47% line-out accuracy. You're not going to win a title on that. They go from making 220-plus tackles one week to 115. I was impressed not just by the nature of this win, but also all of a sudden they actually went off the page a little bit in attack, Mills, this Crusaders side. They went off the page and all of a sudden Richie Mo'unga was at his very, very best, where he got given a licence, he adjusted his depth, and we saw the best of not just their forward pack, but David Havili, Leicester Whanganuku, Jack Goodhue. This was a complete performance. Sevu Reece. There wasn't one man out in that field. I didn't even talk about Will Jordan yet and his balance on attack. Remarkable, remarkable all-round game from the entire team.
Well, you're absolutely right. The balance of their game, so they bet the guys up front, they've got real parity out there, and then they go to the confidence of this. But it needs execution. You need skill execution in wet conditions to be able to pull this sort of stuff. Havili, for me, he was outstanding last night, and the pressure that he took off Mo'unga, and then when you sort of relied on, making sure you covered Havili, and then Whanganuku pops up, and then you cover those guys, and what happens? The magician of Mo'unga. He comes out of nowhere when he's under pressure. So threats all around. But the way they went in there, the coaching staff, you've got to take your head off to them as well, because, their game plan was right on point, even to their kicking game. I mean, they beat the Blues at that as well.
Outcoached, weren't they? Leon McDonald said it's like they had our playbook. It's like they knew where we were going.
Jake, I got to ask you, did they get the selections right? When you think about what they had coming off the bench, now I'm not sure where Dalton Papali'i was health-wise going in, but he was fit to play, and I know the decision was made late. But Carl Tunukuafe, Luke Romano, Ofa Tuangafasi, should some of those guys started? Did they need more options? You talk about a line-out time. I'll just throw this to you, fact. They didn't have the opportunity to change their line-out because they didn't have a line-out jumper on the bench. No James Tucker for this game. I look at this, did they get their selections slightly wrong?
Oh, retrospectively, possibly. I probably would have played Romano just because Whitelock's coming and he's going to throw...
But he's not a line-out jumper.
Yeah, but it's not often that. It's the calmness under pressure. Like, I understand the stats, I get all that, but there were moments for me, like that try just before half-time, Mills, was a moment.
Yeah.
Where the Blues, actually, you go in at half-time and it's 3-0 and they've thrown everything at you.
6-0, you're right.
You know, 6-0, sorry. Yeah, so the Crusaders going, we just threw everything at them and they kept us out. But that try just before halftime, they did win those moments. So I think it's about pressure. And losing the line out is not about what you do. It's about someone being really calm in there. You know, Romano going and push someone, you know, and slow it down and start confusing it himself. What we did is we just went from line out to line out, hoping it'd get better. So I think that was experience. I was really surprised that when Offa came on, the front row got pumped a wee bit. I don't know what happened there. I thought Sam Knott came on and normally he does a decent job and he made a few errors. So there was just a whole list of things that didn't go their way, and that's pressure, I believe.
Mills, the changes in the midfield, though. Taking off Roger Tuivasa-Sheck that early, when you're thinking to yourself, you need guys who can break a defensive line that has been the best in the last couple of weeks. Well, I haven't heard anything that he's injured. To bring on Bryce Heem, he's not necessarily going to break. If you want solid and you're in front, Bryce Heem's your man.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to break the line, surely you're leaving him out there.
And I guess when you look at both sides, perhaps that does paint it. But one team all on the same page. The others, even when you come off the bench, what are we actually trying to change? You bring Bryce Heem on. I know they went over the top to over the line out to him as well to try and change that, but that's still quite risky. And it was slow ball because it was lobbed. When you take Roger Tuivasa-Sheck off and then bring Romano in there, what are you actually trying to come up with to try and beat this? So, and then when the guys go out there, they play like individuals, and I think they were right off their own. Don't get me wrong, they were trying. They were going to go out there and try and spark something, and Dalton Papali almost did. But unfortunately, it almost looked like there was nothing they were going to go to next after they're bombarded by a Crusaders outfit.
Can I ask you a question, JK? You talk about...
No.
I'm going to ask you a question. You said it was
I've had enough of
You said it was their
questions,
worst performance of the season. What about
Crusaders.
the week before? No, for the Blues. You said that was their worst performance of the season. Did they have momentum on the back end of their year going into the final compared to the Crusaders, who, after they lost to the Waratahs, for me, were dominant? They started winning by big margins. They started controlling their destiny. They started to bring all of their players back into the fold. The Blues, I think, in the back end, I don't think they were playing at their best. And maybe if you look at the course of their season, you go through all of their results, they were lucky to win a number of games. They held on against the Force. 2 drop goals, one against the Brumbies, one against the Waratahs in the final moment. For me, I look at it and go, you know what? Was this in some ways about coming in and knowing exactly how to time your run and the final 80 minutes of the season?
No.
Go on, get me if you can.
No. The answer is that this young Blues side have never lived 12 games in a row winning. They've never been in a semi-final that they won by 1 point late. They're living this experience where they're going, wow. Whereas the Crusaders, they've been doing this for 20 years. They know they've got enough experience to go, actually, we lost against the Waratahs. I bet you the leaders stood up and said, you and you got to pick your game up. Whereas the Blues are sort of living this, wow, we're in the finals. Wow, we're winning. Wow, we're unbeaten at home. Wow. So they're actually not actually going through the game in itself. And they're winning moments. They go down to the Crusaders and they win down there. Now, if you look at it coldly, the Crusaders were coming back hard, right? And thank God the clock ran out. But they're just living these moments at the moment. So they're not even thinking about it. Everything's good, right? When you're winning like the Blues have, when you haven't won like that.
Well, you've got to recognise, though, when it's not dominant, though, and when you're not controlling your destiny. And I come back to the fact
But you don't know your destiny, mate. That's the issue. You don't know your destiny.
Well, they thought their destiny was to win a title.
I actually think when Leon McDonald looks back at it, he rotated his squad, the majority of the season. I just don't think they had sort of that settled side leading into the finals. Like when you look at before the quarterfinals, you had different props. Hodgman was there, Tu'nukuafe, then you had Tuangafasi come on. In the locks, Romano was still a starter. Is it Derry? Is it going to be Tucker? To even your flankers, Choate, and then you lose someone like. So when you're leading into that and you're chopping and changing, even right, when Nipololala comes in as a quarterfinal start to this week. You need settle. You need guys to be really settled. And I think when you go back to how he was rotating and trying to build a really big squad, to then go and do that, he was possibly hoping that, okay, I can carry that on right through the whole season. But unfortunately, in finals football, and it's probably this is just my take on it, you need those guys to say, hey, I'm going to be the number one prop. I'm going to be the number one, lock, the number one flanker. And look at where they lost it. Look at where they lost the game. And those first 10 minutes were those key positions.
And I think they were clearly, in the end, the second best team in the competition. The best team ended up holding up the trophy at the end of the season, because that's when it matters and that's when it counts. Pure and simple, they got the job done, the Crusaders, because they were in
No
the
arguments.
end for the course,
absolutely.
the course of the season.
Absolutely no arguments there.
22 out of the 36 All Blacks squad members were there last night. Does it make it interesting in camp on Tuesday?
Well, they're in recovery mode. Oh, they'll get on with it.
They're in
These guys are
party mode, the
professionals.
Crusaders.
Yeah, they're in party mode, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
Deservedly so. Well done for the first time to win that trophy. That'll mean a lot to them. It really will.
It's amazing access right here in the dressing rooms. The moment that Scott Barrett takes the trophy in. How good is that? Something special. You have to appreciate that. You know, whether you're a Crusaders fan or not, you have to appreciate that.
Yeah, we're just sitting here going, gee, I wish I was in there.
I'd done that.
It looks fun.
That would be so cool.
It looks fun. But hey, look, there was one big win from last night, and that was the match officials, because we're not talking about them. That must be a good thing, JK.
Yeah, look, I spoke about Ben in the pre-match. I think that 2 years ago he was our best referee by a long shot, one of the best in the world, because he brought his personality and reffed what was in front of him. I thought last year it got a bit complicated for him, maybe trying to change his game or listen too much to what other people wanted, and he's back to his very best. The thing I loved about last night was the common sense around those shots. Now, we've got to look after the players' heads, Mills, we've got to do that, but I just thought both those decisions were the right decisions, and I don't know, 2 weeks ago or another ref, that would have happened.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the way he refed these situations, I know it took a little wee while. Look, that's a stick figure, isn't there? Hey, Nipo's sort of body height there, JK. You'd be happy with that?
Yeah, no, I was happy with that one.
I mean, reality is the fact that I think a week ago, we could have seen a different result.
We would have.
Totally.
And bottom line, I think the common sense you're talking about, but the understanding of what a rugby play is. And those are rugby movements. Guys getting themselves and dipping into positions and looking to go into contact. Same thing again, if you watch here, Jack Goodhue, there are extenuating circumstances. David Havili puts him into the path of Jack Goodhue, but when you went end on, same thing. He had bended his legs, so he was looking to get himself there in attacking position. Now people go, well, once again, this is contact to the head, his own head as well. But bottom line, I think he could quite easily have been talked into this, Ben O'Keefe. What I'd hope, though, JK and Mills and Kirsty, is there's no repercussions for this. All of a sudden, World Rugby is... For Ben.
Yeah.
Because bottom line, we got a great contest without
Got your back, mate. We got your back.
Exactly. And I don't want to hear from World Rugby the fact that, oh, no, you haven't followed the guidelines. Well, clearly, I think he's worked out in his own head and smartly. There are rugby plays in the game which end up in context.
I hope this is going to be the case also when, you know, the Test series happens, because if it's not, man, we're going backwards. So this is now the standard. I think Ben O'Keefe's done a great job of that.
I think there's a couple of little things we need to realise that Ben did that were great. Nepo's body position, so he's fine because the attacker goes in right. But I also think Goodhue pulled out of it. When he realised that he was going to have a head clash, he just let it go, and he lost that contact.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we spoke about it, Mills, a couple of days ago. Is it taken this long for the players to understand technically what they need to do when they're in a situation of yellow or red card? So.
Well, it's been 18 phenomenal rounds of Super Rugby Pacific. Do you remember who you picked to take up the title? We know you. You too? Well, if you need a reminder... If you need a reminder, we're going back to week 1 of the breakdown with our predictions. We've all picked our top 4 and who will be the overall champion of Super Rugby Pacific. Just a note, these were picked before the first round of the competition. I haven't changed my mind, though. I'm sticking with the Blues, JK, not just to make you happy.
There's no way I'm not going to pick the Blues. Now, so that's my emotional side. If you look at it, I think the Crusaders will be stinging from last year. Emotionally, I've got to go with the Blues. I think we'll miss Paddy.
And I think they're going to win. They've built a nice, good squad, young talent over the last year or so, and I think they take it. Your Blues second. And I have to put the Crusaders in there.
I just look at this and go, you know what? This is a long season where the top 8 is what matters. That's what's going to count. You make the playoffs, I think all the New Zealand teams will do that, and it'll come down to getting 3 wins in a row.
Well, we all got 3 out of 4 in the wrong order, though. Jeff, you got 2 out of 4, but you had the right winner.
Yeah, that's all that matters, right? You get to find the winner. Oh, look, to be honest with you, I actually genuinely cared. I wanted the Blues to win last night, and I said that in the pre-match show because I just thought for the game and that crowd and for the moment and the season they've had and what it would do for the future. And I think they achieved that anyway.